After Ethan stubbornly broke up with me, I bought a ticket and moved out overnight with the child in my belly. I don't want that dog of a man anymore. Mom, where is my dad? Your dad sacrificed himself. What does sacrifice mean? It means he died. Everyone in City A knows that Ethan has a bad temper, but he is different with me. However, ever since his white moonlight returned, Ethan has changed. Breakup is a breakup. With just one breakup, I disappeared for 5 years, and Ethan searched for me like a madman for 5 years. Stella, I was wrong. It doesn't matter even if I have to be a substitute, just don't drive me away. In the bathroom, I tightly gripped the pregnancy test in my hand, the 2 red lines on it particularly glaring. I'm actually pregnant? If it were before, I would definitely be happy and rush to find Ethan to tell him I was pregnant, but now my heart is filled only with anxiety. I gently stroked my lower abdomen and sighed. I wasn't sure what Ethan was really thinking. Entering the living room, the clock on the wall showed it was 7.5 minutes to 2 in the morning. Ethan still hadn't returned, and I could no longer remember how many times this had been since Lillian came back to the country. I have been with Ethan for more than 3 years, and I have never taken the rumored white moonlight, Lillian, to heart. Ethan, I have something to tell you tonight. What time will you be back? Ethan, can you please reply to my message? Are you not planning to come back? Looking at the messages in the Instagram chat that have sunk like stones into the sea. The earliest one was sent at 3 in the afternoon, and the last one was half an hour ago, just after 1 in the morning. The little bit of hope I had left for Ethan gradually faded away in the passage of time, becoming numb. Miss, why don't you go upstairs and sleep first? No need, I'll wait for him to come back. Wang Ma, you don't have to worry about me. The endless desolation of the night, I sat stubbornly in the living room wearing thin clothes, doing nothing but quietly waiting. I couldn't tell if I was waiting for Ethan or for my love for him to completely disappear. Countless happy memories of being with Ethan flashed through my mind, and my eyes gradually turned red. At 3:30 in the morning, the sound of a car engine came from outside the villa. Why am I still not asleep? I rubbed my numb hands, originally wanting to say everything to Ethan, but at this moment, it was all stuck in my throat, unable to spit out or swallow. Where have you been? Ethan's gaze lightly swept over me, not lingering much, and he casually brushed it off. The company is a bit busy. Just hearing it is enough to know it's an excuse. I had already called his secretary to ask. Is the company's work very busy? Ethan felt anxious in his heart, his mind filled with the words Lillian had said to him a few months ago. I saw Stella's ex-boyfriend abroad, and he looks quite a bit like you. I don't mean anything else, it's just that people tend to like the same type, right? Maybe Stella. Oh, never mind, don't think too much about it. Ethan didn't dare to ask Stella, so he secretly had someone check on Stella's ex, and surprisingly, he really looked somewhat like him. Thinking of Stella's reaction when she first saw him, Ethan's self-esteem was hit. You don't understand the company's matters. After saying that, Ethan walked straight up the stairs, unwilling to say another word. A mocking smile curled at the corners of my mouth. Why didn't you come on the day Ethan got his marriage certificate? The words hidden in my heart finally came out, as if from that day on, Ethan and my relationship changed. Ethan paused for a moment, casually avoiding the question. I told you I was meeting clients, didn't I? I stood up from the sofa and looked at the man's tall figure on the stairs. Have you been meeting clients all this time? Not even a few minutes to get a certificate? Ethan has done a lot of ridiculous things for me in the past. When he was pursuing me, he stood up a lot of clients. I don't believe he would skip getting the marriage certificate just to meet a client. I haven't asked because I'm waiting for Ethan to give me a reasonable explanation. Stella, are you really sure you want to get married? I know you didn't come to the movies last month because Lillian called you. I held back my tears behind him and didn't directly answer his question. Besides that time at the cinema, there were actually many other times when Ethan didn't say it, but I knew he went to see Lillian. Perhaps it's true that one doesn't shed tears until they see the coffin. I insisted on hearing Ethan say it himself. Ethan was silent for a while, then responded, I promised her brother that I would take care of her. My heart ached as if it were being torn apart, and I forced myself to ask him calmly, "You've been with her in the hospital every night these past few days, right? Stella, do you really have to dwell on this? There can only be one of us." My hand unconsciously rested on my belly as I waited for him to deliver the final answer. Ethan frowned, treating me as if I were being unreasonable, and silently lifted his foot to continue upstairs. That night, Ethan slept in the study, and I barely slept in the bedroom, tears flowing down my cheeks uncontrollably. I thought of my parents. In the few memories I have left from my childhood, it seemed like they were always arguing. My father often said that if things couldn't go on, they would get a divorce, while my mother insisted she would never let go, threatening not to let any other woman step into our home. In the end, my mother really never let go, and both of them died in a car accident. The next morning when I went downstairs, I vaguely heard him on the phone. "What's wrong with Lillian?" "Okay, I'll go over right away." My eyes were filled with disappointment. He was going to accompany Lillian again. The answer he didn't give me yesterday has already been revealed by his actions today. My voice had no emotional fluctuations, and the discomfort in my heart was evident. "If you go to the hospital, we will break up." Ethan met my gaze, and the doctor on the phone said that Lillian's condition had worsened. Before Henry died, he entrusted his sister to him, and he couldn't not go. "Stella, don't make a scene." Seeing that Ethan was still determined to go out, I calmly repeated what I had just said. "If you go to the hospital, we will break up. If we break up, then we break up." Bang! His voice disappeared with the loud sound of the door closing in the empty villa. I collapsed on the cold steps and cried out loud. I kept comforting myself in my heart, "It's okay, it's all right baby, mommy will take you away." I raised my hand to try to wipe away the tears on my face, but the tears fell like a rushing stream, and I didn't have time to wipe them away, which only made my face a mess. I returned to the bedroom in a daze and tidied up my makeup in front of the vanity. I found 2 dusty suitcases in the corner of the cloakroom. I didn't take many things. I didn't take anything that Ethan had bought. Before leaving, I took off the ruby ring from my middle finger and left it on the dressing table. The engagement ring Ethan gave me is useless now that the marriage won't happen. When Wang Ma saw me carrying 2 suitcases and about to leave, she was startled. "Miss Stella, where are you going? The young master will be worried if he sees you're gone." I forced a smile and firmly pulled the suitcase towards the front door. "He won't. Since he chose Lillian, I will leave with dignity." When they arrived at the hospital, Lillian's attending physician said that her condition had been basically stabilized. Ethan breathed a sigh of relief, but the feeling of frustration in his heart did not disappear. He had argued with Stella, they had never fought before. "If there's anything, call me. I have to leave for a company matter." "Ethan, can you leave a little later? I'm really scared alone." Seeing that Ethan was about to leave, Lillian hurriedly tugged at his sleeve. Seeing the person in front of him, Ethan thought of the woman in the villa. Is Stella so concerned about Lillian's presence because she also likes herself a little? "There are doctors and nurses here, don't be afraid they will save you, I'm leaving first." Ethan went to the company and stayed in the office for 3 full days before returning to the villa. He specifically asked the female employees at the company and bought a large pile of things that girls like, as well as flowers to fill the trunk. The living room was empty, and there was no one in the garden when I came in. "She should be upstairs. At this time, Stella likes to lie on the chaise longue and bask in the sun." Ethan carefully opened the door, and surprisingly, the bedroom was also empty. Ethan panicked. He rushed to the study, saw no one, and then went to the bathroom and the dressing room. He keenly noticed that something was missing. The ruby ring on the dressing table sparkled dazzlingly. Ever since he proposed to Stella, she hadn't taken it off even once. Stella has really left. In City C, I sit in a rocking chair in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, sunlight streaming through the glass into the room. My parents passed away early, and I was never good at business. Before my grandfather passed away, he entrusted the company to my third uncle to manage, leaving me shares and some belongings, This small villa is one of my grandfather's legacies. Sister, are you ready to give birth to his child alone? This is my child. I have no relationship with that man. I chose to have the child because I love my child. I decided to give birth to him after careful consideration. I can provide this child with a good material foundation and all my love. My belly is almost 5 months along, and it's slightly rounded enough to tell I'm pregnant. My best friend Emma is peeling an apple for me, indignantly saying, "I just think that deadbeat guy is getting off too easy. When he was pursuing you, he was spending millions on antiques and learning to bake cakes, and now he's such a jerk." Ethan's name is like a sharp blade. Every time it's mentioned, it feels like a piece is scraped off my heart. I lowered my head and touched my belly, cleverly changing the subject. "I want to eat an apple, you're peeling it so slowly." Emma sped up her peeling, still complaining, "I'm already fast enough." During my pregnancy, I started to have back pain, excessive sleepiness, and even frequent nightmares. That night, I dreamed of Ethan once again. It started as a beautiful dream. Lillian had not returned to the country, and Ethan was as good to me as ever. "Stella, love exists, you can't live in the shadow of your childhood." We got married, and on the day we received our marriage certificate, Ethan was waiting early at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Soon after, I gave birth to a healthy and lively baby. Then the scene changed. Ethan became irritable and started to lose his temper with me, often not coming home. I have said many times that I owe the Shin family, and I must take good care of Lillian. "Stella, can't you understand me?" "I can't understand. The baby is also sick, and I need you too. The child needs a father." In my dreams, I go crazy like my mother, arguing with Ethan, holding onto his arm tightly to prevent him from leaving. Ethan's phone kept ringing, and I could guess it was Lillian's call. "I have to go to the hospital now, Stella, don't be unreasonable." I reached out to grab Ethan's phone, tears streaming down like broken pearls. Even begging him on my knees in despair, Ethan still left. Looking at his receding figure, I seemed to see my father slamming the door and walking out when I was a child. Ethan's figure overlapped with the memory of my father's figure from childhood. "Ethan. Ethan. Ethan." I murmured, waking up in a sweat, and only then did I realize this was a dream when I saw the furnishings in the room. Perhaps the dream was too real. There were still tears in the corners of my eyes, and I remembered everything from the dream clearly. In the dream, Ethan once again chose Lillian and abandoned me. Time passed quickly, and more than 4 months went by. One summer, I gave birth to a son. I named the child Leo. In this world, besides my uncle and cousin, my third relative appeared. "Emma, he's so ugly. I want to be a godmother. I'm a cartoonist and can work from home." Before I had Leo, I didn't like going out. After having Leo, I really can't go out at all. Leo was born weak, probably because of my poor emotional state during pregnancy. I hired 2 aunts to take turns caring for Leo, and with Emma coming over to help from time to time, it got much better. This situation continued until Leo was 5 and started kindergarten. What would you do if you were found out bringing Leo back to City A like this? My cousin is getting married, and besides, I can't stay away from City A for my whole life, right? My cousin's wedding, my uncle called, and I'm planning to take Leo to City A for a few days. Looking at the little bean sitting on the sofa, it would be a lie to say I wasn't worried about meeting Ethan. When he was just born, his little face was wrinkled and it was hard to tell who he looked like, but as he grew up, his features started to resemble Ethan more and more. I often find myself staring at him in a daze, and occasionally I think back to when we were in City A. "Mom, where is City A?" City A is the place where Mom grew up. Leo crawled over to where I was, nodding as if he understood, and hesitantly asked, "Is Dad also in City A?" Hearing the word Dad, my mind exploded. I had never mentioned Dad to Leo, and Leo had never talked about Dad since he started speaking. "Leo, how do you think Dad is in City A?" Xuan's mom and dad pick her up from school together every day. Leo has grown up, and he has started to realize what a dad is. Every family should have a role like a dad, but our family only has Mom. Mom, why doesn't our family have a dad? Mom? Seeing that I was silent and didn't answer, Leo called out to Mom again. The child will find out the truth sooner or later. I can't let him feel that he is different from other kids. I held Leo in my arms, rubbed his head, and pondered how to speak. Leo, you also have a dad, but he can't be here. Why can't Dad be here? The little guy blinked and looked at me with a confused expression. Your dad sacrificed himself. What is sacrifice? Leo is only 5 years old and has no concept of death. I think this should be a kind lie. It's better than the child knowing that his dad is a scumbag. It can also teach him the meaning of death. If you die, I will never see you again, and I can never meet you again. Mom, please don't die. Leo wants to see Mom every day. Hearing this, I was once again stunned. I thought Leo would cry and make a fuss, but I didn't expect Leo to react like this. I held Leo a little tighter and comforted him. Don't worry, Leo, you can still see Mom for a long time. Leo's little hand clutched the corner of my clothes, his voice soft and childish. Mom won't allow me to leave Leo. I smiled with relief, thinking of a certain man whose eyelashes drooped in disappointment. My childhood only had my father's silhouette. I know too well what a healthy family means for a child. Will Leo be sad without a dad? The little one in his arms shook his head without hesitation and answered. No, Leo just needs a mom. To him, a dad is just a part of the family, just like Xuan's dad is only useful for picking her up from school. When kindergarten was on break, I took my child back to City A. When we got off the plane, I wrapped the child up tightly and made sure they wore a mask and a hat, just to avoid being recognized. I heard Emma mention a few things. It seems Ethan has still been inquiring about his news these past few years. Leo is here. Uncle gives you a big red envelope. Thank you, Uncle. At the wedding venue, Jason handed Leo a big red envelope as soon as he saw him. Bro, he doesn't lack money. This is my intention as an uncle, it's not about the money. Not far away, Ryan quietly took out his phone to take a picture and sent it to the Instagram group. I felt that this woman might be Stella. Ryan and Stella were a bit distant, so he couldn't hear their conversation clearly, and Stella was wearing a hat. He couldn't be sure if it was really Stella, just guessing based on Jason's level of intimacy with her. Someone in the Instagram group quickly replied with a bunch of messages. S. What can you even see from this? L. Looks like a woman. A. Even Ethan himself wouldn't recognize it. Among these messages, one stood out particularly. F. I'll be there soon. J. Don't you know, bro? Ryan scratched his head. How would Ethan know where he was if it wasn't Ethan? Ethan didn't reply further. He guessed that Jason's wedding would definitely have Stella there. He had someone waiting at the airport and the wedding venue, and as soon as Stella showed up, they would immediately message him. Mom, there are so many delicious foods. Leo's eyes lit up when he saw all this food, and a lot of it is something I usually don't let him eat. I nodded and didn't stop him from picking up the dishes. Because Leo's health is poor, I usually pay a lot of attention to his diet, but today I'll make an exception. Mom, Leo wants a straw. Okay, Mom will go find a waiter to get one for you. I had just gotten up, and the smile on my face froze. The man's appearance was still the same, but he had gained a bit more maturity and composure. His demeanor was much softer than it had been 5 years ago. He stood about 3 meters away from me, neither too far nor too close, his intense gaze fixed directly on me. I instinctively positioned myself in front of Leo, not wanting him to discover the child's existence. Mom, what's wrong with you? With a call of Mom, Ethan's gaze turned to me from behind. Before coming, he had heard that Stella brought a child when she got off the plane, and he thought it was a mistake made by his subordinates. He never expected that she actually brought a child, and that child even called her mom. Ethan had the answer in his heart, stuck in his throat and unable to speak. I thought I was calm, but my trembling hands had already revealed everything. When we met again, it was unexpectedly sudden. The two of them just stared at each other, neither taking a step forward, as if time had frozen at that moment. Mom, Leo wants a straw. Leo poked his little head out from behind me, tugging at her hem to pull her attention back. I held the child tightly, not daring to step away. I went to find a waiter, to ask for a straw. Ethan reacted first and turned to look for the waiters around. He wasn't afraid that Stella would run away again. From the moment she returned to City A, it was destined that she couldn't escape. Until the man handed the straw to Leo, I had only one thought in my mind. It's over, everything is over. Mom, can I take the straw that Uncle gave? Leo looked at Ethan suspiciously, wanting to take the straw but remembering what his mom said about not taking things from strangers. Ethan raised his eyes to me, and too many emotions were revealed in his gaze. The joy of having regained something lost, and the careful fear of not being understood occupied most of it. Leo, you can't drink too much milk, so let's skip it for today. My first reaction was a bit cruel for Leo. A look of confusion appeared on Leo's face. He didn't understand why he suddenly couldn't drink milk. Didn't Mom say yesterday that we should drink more milk to grow taller? Leo has grown up and needs to learn to drink milk without a straw. Ethan understands that I don't want my child to come into contact with myself. Jason was startled to see Ethan appear. Over the years, Ethan had always come to inquire about Stella's news. Each time, he was brushed off, but he didn't expect that today he would actually run into Stella directly. Let's talk. There's nothing to talk about. I flatly refused. Breaking up meant breaking up, and now we've long since cleared our relationship. Leo is my child alone, and no one can take him away. It's inappropriate to say those things in front of the child. Ethan said in a low voice, implying a blatant threat. I glared at him, but ultimately I compromised. I handed the child over to my third uncle and followed Ethan to the stairwell. I impatiently urged him, just say what you want to say quickly. The child is mine, right? Ethan wanted Stella to give him a definite answer. If she said no, he wouldn't believe it either. When it comes to the child, I feel guilty, but thinking about the past, I confidently replied, no. From what I know about Ethan, just by looking at his reaction earlier, I can tell he believes the child is his. He is our child. This statement almost made me laugh out of anger. Ethan, where does your confidence come from? Where do you get the face? You just open your mouth to acknowledge your son, looking like it wasn't you who wanted to break up in the first place. It was all my fault in the past. After you left, I searched for you for a long time. I really missed you all these years. Ethan took a step forward, closing the distance between us. I took a cautious step back. I never expected Ethan to apologize first. His temper is notoriously stubborn and bad in our circle, and even when he pursued me in the past and made me angry, he never directly said sorry. At most, he would send gifts and cling to me shamelessly. We have already broken up. I don't agree. Hearing the words, break up, Ethan got anxious. The thing he regrets the most is saying goodbye to Stella that day. Ethan broke up with me, and you have no right to disagree. Seeing my firm attitude, Ethan didn't continue to talk to me about getting back together. Thinking of that little boy, he asked, is he called Leo? None of your business. Leo is my Achilles heel. If Ethan tries to take the child from me, it will cost me my life. Stella, your temper has gotten worse. Ethan's voice softened, sounding a bit wronged as if he were being spoiled. I have never seen such an Ethan, your skin has thickened too. Ethan didn't get angry upon hearing this. How could he dare to lose his temper with Stella? If Stella ran away again, he would definitely go crazy. Why didn't you tell me back then that you left with Leo? He's not your son. Why tell him after the breakup? Now you want to recognize him as your son, what a dream. Ethan seems to not understand my words and keeps talking to himself. Lillian and I have nothing. Stella, you have to believe me. The familiar name appears, and I feel a sting in my heart as it is brought up again. The scene of me arguing with Ethan over Lillian is still fresh in my memory, and this thorn has stabbed me hard again. I don't care about Ethan anymore, now I just want to live well with Leo. Don't care? Does that mean he doesn't care anymore either? Ethan hooked my fingertip with his hand, his voice hoarse. I know I was wrong, come back. What substitute? He doesn't mind that anymore. As long as Stella can return to his side, he won't get tangled up in these things either. I withdrew my hand without a trace of hesitation. Ethan, we ended a long time ago. Ethan kept his head down and didn't speak for a long time. I thought he had accepted the reality and turned to leave. Stella, I was wrong. It doesn't matter if I'm just a substitute, please don't drive me away. The man's choked sobs came from behind me, and I paused, turning back in surprise to look at him. Ethan's eyes were red, tears streaming down the corners of his eyes, looking pitifully abandoned. He actually cried? Before I could react, Ethan pulled me into his arms. The familiar scent filled my nose, awakening some memories from the past. Consider it a plea from me, give me another chance. When I got home that day and found you weren't there, I regretted it. I shouldn't have argued with you. I shouldn't have said hurtful things. I won't dwell on the substitute issue anymore, please don't be angry with me, okay? Ethan held me and cried, saying a lot of things. My head was buzzing, and it took me a while to react. What substitute, Ethan, what are you talking about? Ethan tightened his grip, as if he wanted to embed me into his body. I tried to push him away, let go of me first. The man didn't budge, so I added, I won't run. Only then did Ethan release me, and looking at the redness in the corners of his eyes, my memory was momentarily pulled back to the past. I didn't understand what you just said about a substitute. Ethan reluctantly spat out a name, Kerr, your ex-boyfriend. He is not my ex. I was stunned. Kerr was my senior in high school. We had a good relationship back then, but after starting college, we gradually lost contact. A glimmer of light appeared in Ethan's dark eyes as he repeatedly confirmed, did you like him? I shook my head in confusion, completely unaware of what he was asking. How did I end up being related to Kerr for no reason? The corners of my mouth lifted, and my eyes, glistening with moisture, were very captivating. He held me in his arms again and murmured, then you are not allowed to like him in the future. I was completely stunned. Are you crazy? Why can't I understand a single word you say? After Ethan's explanation, I roughly understood. He misunderstood that I was with him because I liked Kerr. Leo is still waiting for me. I'll go in with you. Ethan grabbed my hand and was about to go in, but I shook off his hand and said coldly, we haven't reconciled. I know. Ethan didn't continue to hold my hand and obediently followed behind me. Just returned to the wedding venue, and happened to run into Jason coming over to toast. Jason asked Ethan, didn't you go to Country F? He checked, and Ethan should be on a business trip in Country F today. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to call Stella back. Ethan replied somewhat sarcastically, didn't you say you didn't know where Stella went? Indeed, I didn't know. This time Stella said she wanted to come back on her own. Ethan was too lazy to dig up old grievances with Jason and followed me as soon as he spotted me. I had a conversation with my third uncle, and Leo wanted to go to the bathroom. When Ethan saw I was about to leave, he quickly ran to my side, didn't you say you wouldn't run anymore? That was just now. I didn't give him a glance and continued to walk with the child. Ethan directly blocked my way, his expression serious. Stella. I'll take Leo to the bathroom. Leo's gaze shifted back and forth between me and Ethan, confused. Ethan's worried heart relaxed, I'll take Leo, you can't go to the men's restroom. When Leo was little, I had no choice but to take him to the women's restroom. This year, Leo started kindergarten and understood the difference between boys and girls. Every time I took him to the restroom, he would always ask me, Mom, why am I going to the women's restroom? I'm a boy. I hesitated and looked down at the confused Leo. Mom, Leo wants to pee. Leo is holding my hand with one hand and grabbing his pants with the other, looking at me anxiously. Let me take the child. Ethan spoke again, and I sighed, feeling uncertain. Then you take Leo, and I'll wait for him at the bathroom door. I'm afraid Ethan will run away with the child, so I'll guard the bathroom door. Leo looked up at the little figure on the bathroom door and turned back to me, excitedly shouting, "Mom, I can go to the boys' bathroom today." In an instant, my nose felt a bit sour. If we weren't outside, tears would really have flowed. Ryan was startled when he saw Ethan come in holding a child while washing his hands. "Ethan, where did you get a child from? It's not a kidnapping." Ethan calmly responded, taking Leo inside to help him use the bathroom. Ryan was originally puzzled about which child this was, but when he saw Stella outside the bathroom, his mind suddenly clicked. This can't be Stella's son, right? Ethan has never taken care of a child, but fortunately Leo can go to the bathroom by himself, he just needs to watch him wash his hands. "Uncle, are you Mom's friend?" "I am. I am your mom's friend." Ethan really wanted to tell him that he was his father, but the words got stuck in his throat and he could only change his words. Seeing Leo being brought out intact by Ethan, Stella's furrowed brows finally relaxed. "Thank you. This is what I should do." From the time I came out of the bathroom until the wedding ended, Ethan kept smiling beside me. On the contrary, I couldn't smile at all. "Are you going back to stay tonight?" Ethan tentatively asked in the elevator. I know where he means by going back, and I couldn't help but remind him, "Ethan, I didn't agree to get back together with you." "What does getting back together mean, Mom?" Leo didn't understand the meaning of these two words and asked in a childish voice. I never knew how to explain the meaning of these two words to the child. Just as Ethan was about to explain, I stopped him with a glance. "Leo will understand when he grows up." I stayed at the Chi family at night, thinking that Ethan's personality would definitely cling to me, but I didn't expect him to agree so easily. I originally planned to stay in City A with Leo until the National Day holiday ended, but now I've changed my mind and will leave tomorrow. The longer I stay in City A, the more trouble it becomes. The next morning, after saying goodbye to Leo and my third uncle, I headed straight to the airport. Before getting out of the car, Leo and I put on our masks to avoid being recognized. As the boarding time approached, my heart was not as tense as it had been at the beginning. "It's almost time, Leo, let's go." "Okay." I pulled Leo forward, and just as we were about to reach the boarding gate, a familiar voice came from behind. "Stella." Without turning around, I already knew it was Ethan. I quickly picked up the child and was ready to run, but Ethan caught up with me first. "Mom is that uncle from yesterday." My face fell. I should have realized it wouldn't go so smoothly. "Are you leaving again?" "Where I go is my freedom." Ethan frowned, looking at Leo in my arms, and sighed, "Fine, you can go." I was in disbelief. Did he really agree just like that? Afraid that Ethan would change his mind, I ran back to the boarding gate with Leo in my arms, and only felt at ease once I was on the plane. "Mom, are you hiding from that uncle?" "Leo, don't be afraid, we won't see that uncle again." I gently patted Leo's back, and Leo tilted his head, his big eyes sparkling. Leo is not afraid. Leo likes that uncle. He takes Leo to the men's restroom. My expression stiffened, and I was shocked in my heart, quietly asking, "Do you really like that uncle?" Leo nodded heavily, not hiding his happiness at all. "Yes, Leo really likes that uncle. That uncle took him to pee yesterday and even peeled shrimp for him during dinner." I wondered if this was what it meant for a father and son to be connected by heart. "Uncle." Following Leo's voice, I looked over, and Ethan reappeared in my line of sight. "Hello, Leo." Ethan is acting as if nothing is wrong, sitting next to me and greeting Leo. My expression reveals my impatience. "Why are you here again?" "Where I go is my freedom." Ethan felt relieved that he had already kept a backup plan and bought a ticket for this flight. I have a bad feeling that Ethan is probably going to follow us to City C. Half an hour after the plane took off, Leo fell asleep holding my arm. My entire arm went numb, and I didn't dare to move, afraid of waking Leo. Seeing this, Ethan leaned close to my ear and said, "Why not wake him up? That way your hand won't hurt." I frowned. Leo's health was already poor. How could I wake him up while he was sleeping? It was just mealtime, and it was inconvenient for me to eat like this. Ethan held a bowl and scooped some rice to bring to my mouth. The aroma of the food made my stomach acid increase. The discomfort in my stomach felt even worse. I won't eat, you take it away. Just eat a little. I said I won't eat. I also have a responsibility for this child. I'm really hungry. Ethan is right, he also has a responsibility for this child, so let's just eat. Leo woke up in a daze and saw Ethan feeding me with a spoon, one bite at a time. Dad? He slurred out these two words, startling both me and Ethan. I asked uncertainly, Leo, what did you just say? Leo yawned and stretched his hand. That's how Schwanschwan's dad feeds Schwanschwan's mom. Ethan smiled slightly, secretly tugging at the hem of my clothes. I put my hand in my coat pocket, neither refuting nor admitting. I silently asked myself if Leo's growth would be better with a father's presence. Would Ethan be a good father? It was already 8:30 p.m. when the plane landed, and we still hadn't left the airport. Ethan's phone kept ringing. At first, Ethan didn't want to answer, but it rang a few more times. I can vaguely guess who it is, you answer it. Ethan answered the phone, his voice maintaining a sense of detachment. What did the doctor say? I'm not in Cydia right now, I'll be back in a few days. If there's anything, message me. It's Lillian, and I'm pretty sure that sick beauty of his is calling again. It feels like a small stone has dropped in my heart, not exactly painful, but a bit uncomfortable. I find it amusing. Ethan has long been out of my life, so naturally, Lillian's call to him has nothing to do with me either. Ethan looked at me, his expression gradually cooling down. He said a few short sentences and hurriedly hung up the phone. He reached out to grab my hand, but I shook it off. Holding the child, I unconsciously quickened my pace, wanting to sever my ties with him. Stella, wait for me. He grabbed my wrist tightly, and when I tried to pull away, he held on even tighter. Let go. Listen to me explain. I don't want to listen, holding a child, unable to leave, forced to stay in place and listen to him. The hospital called because her condition has worsened. You and her have nothing going on, it's just because of her brother. I've heard all this before. Before Ethan could finish speaking, I impatiently interrupted him. I didn't say anything heavier, fearing it would affect the child. Leo is still here, let go. The two sides are at a stalemate, and Ethan loses the battle when he meets my gaze. Let me hold Leo, he's too heavy. My right hand is sore and painful, pretending not to hear Ethan's voice, stubbornly holding on to Leo. Children are often the most sensitive at certain moments, and at this moment, Leo keenly sensed something. Leo's hand brushed against my face. Mom, Leo can walk by himself. No, Mom can hold you. I'm really afraid that tears will flow out in the next second. I feel really lucky to have such a lovely and understanding child. Ethan stubbornly followed me to my doorstep and refused to leave, no matter what I said. I made up my mind and directly shut him out the front door. If he freezes or starves, what does that have to do with me? In this season, the most he would get is bitten by mosquitoes outside. Mom, is Uncle sleeping outside the door? Yes. The moment I put Leo on the sofa, my right arm regained sensation. Leo murmured softly, it's very hot outside. I helped Leo change his slippers again and kissed his forehead. Uncle has feet, and if it gets hot, he will walk by himself. Leo, go brush your teeth and go to sleep. Isn't Mom going to help Leo brush his teeth? Leo, be good, Mom has something to do in the study, so Leo will brush his teeth by himself. There are some parts of the draft I drew before the holiday that need to be revised, so I went to the study. I want to finish the revisions quickly to accompany Leo. She originally thought she would only return after the National Day holiday, so she gave her aunt a break. Leo watched me go to the study and quietly walked to the door to open it. Ethan was afraid that if Stella softened her heart and opened the door without seeing him, he would get angry, so he didn't dare to move. He just didn't expect that it was Leo who opened the door for him. Uncle? Leo tilted his head and peeked out from behind the door. Ethan squatted down to meet his gaze. Did Mom ask you to open the door? Leo shook his head and said word by word, I opened it secretly by myself. Ethan became worried about the child's safety. Leo, you can't open the door by yourself, you might get taken away, Mom and I have talked about it many times. Leo walked out of the house and sat on the steps at the door with Ethan. Then why did you still come out? In response to Ethan's question, Leo did not answer directly. Leo thought for a moment and nervously asked, You, Uncle, are you Dad? Ethan suppressed his excitement, he couldn't say it without Stella's consent. Leo continued to probe, You are Dad, right? Ethan still didn't answer, and Leo continued, I know you are the dad, my godmother often scolded Ethan for being a scumbag, I heard Mom calling your name. Ethan's throat felt dry, he wanted to defend himself but felt he really owed something to her and her son. It has not been easy for Stella to raise her child alone for 5 years. The rare feeling of helplessness in the past, Ethan felt it all on them, mother and child. Leo. I found that the child was missing and rushed downstairs in a panic. From a distance, I saw a big one and a small one at the door through the crack. Mom. Leo quickly stood up, his head hanging in guilt. I immediately noticed the 2 mosquito bites on the child's arm. Ethan, how could you incite Leo to open the door for you? Look at his hands, they're all bitten by mosquitoes. Ethan was afraid Stella would blame the child, so Leo would hate him for not arguing back. Leo's head hung even lower, and he murmured softly, I opened the door for Uncle, but Uncle didn't ask me to open the door for him. I got anxious and pulled Leo to go inside. Didn't Mom say not to open the door for strangers? I'm sorry, Mom, but there are a lot of mosquitoes outside, and the more Leo pleads for Ethan, the more worried I become. Leo still doesn't know that Ethan is his father. If he knew, would he really go with Ethan? Ethan stood downstairs, there were many mosquitoes, and before long he was bitten several times. He left only after all the lights in the building were completely turned off. I didn't see Ethan for the next 2 days. When he got off the plane, he answered Lillian's call, so he should have gone back to City A to be with her. I increasingly felt that keeping him outside the door that night was a wise choice. In the evening, as the sun was setting, I took Leo to the nearby supermarket and came back. I noticed that there were many boxes piled up at the entrance of the small villa next door. Uncle! Leo shouted happily, and I saw Ethan waving to greet us. If you have anything in the future, you can come directly to me. Shameless! A feeling of annoyance arose, which did not dissipate even after finishing dinner. Ethan often comes over to curry favor, either buying toys for Leo or bringing fruit. I refuse to accept any of it and let those things sit at the door. When the fruit goes bad, Ethan takes it away himself, while the rest of the toys and daily necessities remain piled at the doorstep. Until the 4th, Emma came to find me. She said Ethan is the child's father, and it's only right for him to move all those things in. I had already called Emma on the morning of the 2nd to explain the situation, and at that time, she was traveling. Now that she's back, she's insisting on helping me tidy up, but I stopped her. Ding dong. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. Usually, no one comes to see me, except for Emma. It should be Ethan. I was in the living room with Leo building blocks, when Emma angrily opened the door. As soon as she saw Ethan, she started to curse, You scumbag, how dare you show your face here? Ethan knew Emma, and he often asked her for help when he was pursuing Stella. I didn't know about Leo before, it wasn't intentional, Stella has already broken up with you. Don't disturb her anymore. Bang! The door was slammed shut by Emma, and Ethan was left with a face full of dust. Ethan has been coming for more than half a month, and Aunt Lee just returned to work and didn't dare to ask. Now she secretly asks me if he is the child's father. I shook my head and said, The child's father is dead. Aunt Lee advised me with a look of regret, This young man is quite good, handsome, and if you look closely, he resembles Leo a bit. You should think about it for yourself. I don't want to think about it, I have already considered him once before. On the day we were supposed to get the marriage certificate, it was very windy, and I sat in the Civil Affairs Bureau waiting for him for a long time. He didn't come, and I didn't ask much. He doesn't like to come home, so I waited for him at home for several nights. Mom, the uncle left something at the door. Leo is holding milk, reminding me that Ethan is coming again today. I've never wished so much for Leo to stay in kindergarten every day, so I wouldn't have to see Ethan. At the end of the month, I left in the morning to take Leo to kindergarten. Ethan appeared right on time, following us at a distance that was neither too close nor too far. I passed him a few times, and he smiled at me, saying, "This is my freedom, you have to get a marriage certificate with me to control me." Who would want to get a marriage certificate with him? I might as well dream of standing in line at the Civil Affairs Bureau for a day. On the way back after dropping off Leo, Ethan jogged up to my side. I might have to stay in City A for a few days. People are always prone to being foolish, and I am no exception. Why are you going back? The conflict was written all over Ethan's face. I have some business at the company. Fine, probably to accompany Lillian. I didn't continue to ask, too lazy to humiliate myself. I couldn't sleep at night, afraid that turning over would wake Leo, so I could only rest with my eyes closed. I suddenly remembered something my father used to say, but I forgot the specific reason for it. My father smashed the glass cup hard on the ground in front of me and shouted at my mother, "Look at how sick she is, why do you have to provoke her?" My mother forcefully pushed me to the ground, and the glass pierced my knee. She cried out in anger, "Together, my daughter and I are not as good as her, we might as well die together to complete your happiness." Everything that could be smashed in the living room was destroyed. I reached down to touch the scar on my knee that had already faded, feeling a sharp pain in my knee. The next day was Saturday, and Leo was still asleep. I was being foolish again. I walked to Ethan's door and rang the doorbell, not sure if he was still home. Maybe he had flown back to be with Lillian overnight? Just as I was thinking this, the door opened, and Ethan walked out from inside. He greeted me at the door with surprise when he saw me come in, and for some reason, I walked in. "Have you had breakfast? Can I cook you a bowl of noodles?" I shook my head to refuse, but Ethan had already gone into the kitchen. The noodles looked as good as ever, and after a few bites, I found the taste to be just the same as before. Very delicious. He didn't ask me why I came, just stared at me with bright eyes. "What time is your flight?" 10 o'clock. "Oh." I lowered my head and took 2 more sips of soup, feeling many things weighing heavily on my heart. I originally wanted to directly question him about whether he went back to take care of Lillian, and then vent my anger by scolding him like crazy. But as soon as I walked in, that thought disappeared. Such hysterical arguments reminded me too much of my mother, and I was scared. In the end, I just grabbed a bowl of noodles and went home. During these few days when Ethan wasn't around, I kept having dreams. It's strange that I hadn't dreamed in a long time before he came. In the evening, I picked up Leo from school. He was carrying his little backpack. "Mom, the kindergarten assigned homework, and we need to submit a family photo." A family photo. I never took a family photo when I was a child. When is it due? Next Monday. I first thought of Ethan, but then shook my head. I didn't want to take a photo with him. A simple family photo became a challenge for me. Raising a child is much harder than I initially imagined. Suddenly, I thought of someone named Henry, who happens to be in City C during this time. But how should I explain to Leo if he comes to take a family photo? Forget it, I'll go see if Ethan is back. Although I was very reluctant, I still pressed the doorbell at Ethan's house. The first time there was no response. I pressed it 2 more times, and still no one answered. He hasn't come back. I can't say I'm sad, but I'm not happy either. "Mom, when are we taking pictures?" As soon as we entered, Leo ran up to me and hugged my leg, asking. Mom called to ask Uncle. Leo seemed very happy, bouncing around like a rabbit. I called Henry to tell him about this, and he readily agreed. On Sunday, Henry came to pick me and Leo up for a photo shoot. In the morning, Leo was happily smiling, but then his smile suddenly disappeared. "What's wrong, Leo?" I asked, a bit worried. I didn't think much of it. He is still young, and it's normal for him to want to sleep. Henry is driving, and he glanced at us through the rearview mirror. After we finish shooting, let's take Leo to the nearby amusement park. The weather is nice today. I think it's a good idea. Sounds good. I haven't taken him there in a long time. Leo sat quietly in the baby chair, not saying a word. I thought he was happy to be there, but after taking the photos, he yawned a few times and said he wanted to go home to sleep. Henry sighed and said gently, "It's okay, we can go next time when we have the chance." I felt a bit guilty. I originally wanted to invite Henry to lunch before heading back. On the way back, I sat in the passenger seat while Leo was in the baby seat in the back. As we were about to reach home, I saw Ethan. Of course, he saw me too, and his face visibly darkened. For some reason, I felt a bit happy inside. I admit my thoughts were dark. He didn't think about us, mother and son, when he went to accompany Lillian. "Uncle!" Leo shouted hello to Ethan outside the car window. Henry had seen Ethan before, in my Instagram friend circle, and he quietly asked me, "Your ex-boyfriend?" I nodded non-committally, yes. The car stopped at my doorstep, and Henry said to me, "Stella can still call me when taking family photos in the future." I was taken aback for a moment, and it wasn't until Henry drove away that I suddenly realized something. It turned out that Henry had been hiding such thoughts all along. Ethan stood not far away, looking at me with a scorching gaze that made me feel uncomfortable all over. His face was still so dark, and it felt like his emotions were about to explode at any moment. "Stella, let's talk." "What else is there to talk about?" I let Leo go back to the room first. I know Ethan's tone all too well. He used to get jealous and throw a tantrum like this. Ethan walked up to me, his pitch-black eyes looking at me. "Who is he?" "The stepfather you found for Leo?" Just a few words, as expected. I looked up to meet his gaze, my tone unfriendly. "What does it have to do with you?" Ethan's face looked even worse, his brows tightly furrowed. "Leo is my son, what does that have to do with me?" I felt his patience had reached its limit. If I continued, he would probably explode. Thinking of how angry he looks makes me want to laugh from the bottom of my heart. "Who said he was born from you and me?" "I don't think I've ever said that Leo is his son, right?" "Stella." Ethan called my name with a heavier voice. "What is it?" "If you have something to say, say it. If not, I want to go back to my room and catch up on sleep." The next second, I felt a force pushing me forward, and Ethan pulled me into his arms. Before I could react, his hand was on the back of my head, and his warm lips pressed against mine, easily parting my lips. "Ugh. Bastard." Ethan is very strong. I can't struggle free. His kiss leaves me breathless, the taste of blood spreads throughout my mouth. Hiss. Slap. Ethan let go of me, and immediately my palm struck his face hard. His pale face turned red, and he smiled at me with the corners of his mouth raised. Not a loss. Ethan now looked more like he used to. During this reunion, his docility almost made me think he had changed gender. Crazy. After I finished cursing, I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist and pulled me back into his arms. "Let go." Ethan obviously wouldn't listen to me. He seemed to find my anger amusing. "Are you going to take a family photo with him?" I was so angry that I didn't want to talk, and if I wanted to take a photo with him, he had to be at home too. "What do you think you are, a family?" I want to break free from him, but Ethan holds me tighter. "A family photo can only be taken with me." "Why should it be like that?" "I have already broken up with him, so why does he get to decide when to take a photo?" Ethan narrowed his eyes slightly and threatened in a low voice, "If you don't take a picture, I'll go in and tell Leo I'm his dad." I believe Ethan could really do this. "I've already taken a picture, how can I explain if I take another one?" Ethan's lips curled up, a bit smug. He knows I'm his father. I was stunned and took a while to understand what he was saying. "Leo knows?" "He knew from the first day we met, thanks to your best friend always cursing me by name." Ethan looked like he had to take a photo. Anyway, since Leo already knew, I could only take another one in the afternoon. Since they recognized each other as father and son, Ethan has become more and more blatant. Even when Emma is around, he directly pushes the door open to come in, and Emma scolds him. Ethan just proudly says, "Is it not okay for me to come see my son?" One afternoon, I fell asleep in the living room, and when I woke up, I saw Ethan staring at me intently. I was startled by him. "Next time, you're not allowed to just come in like that." Ethan quickly kissed my cheek, and he's been doing this often lately. At first, I slapped him a few times, and he enjoyed it, becoming even more reckless with his hands. "You can hit me to death if you want." I went to the living room to get some water, and Ethan hugged me from behind, his hands starting to move restlessly up and down. "Ethan, don't take advantage of me. Go ahead and hit me, I have thick skin." His kiss traveled from my ear to my neck, my body's instinctive desire calling out to me. I started to act cheap. Leo wasn't home, and my soul wandered briefly for a few hours. After taking a shower, Ethan came out wrapped in a towel, with droplets of water still not dried from his hair. A handsome man emerging from the bath. The visual impact is very strong. "Are you free tomorrow afternoon?" Ethan asked in a very casual tone, as if he were asking what the weather would be like tomorrow. "Do you have something going on?" "I want to ask you to get the certificate." I'm not surprised at all. I knew from the time I was with Ethan that I would fall in love with him over and over again. However, I refused to get the marriage certificate. Lillian has always been a source of worry for me, and I won't get the certificate with him until this matter is resolved. It's just like having slept with a high-end escort, and I can afford the price. I gave Lillian some money to send her away. Ethan looks confident of victory. I didn't have any special reaction. My cousin had already called to tell me a few weeks ago. "Oh?" Ethan repeated it in a rhetorical tone. "I didn't say it was because of Lillian that I didn't get the certificate. There is that reason, but it's not the whole story. I'm just stubborn and don't want to admit it. Stella." He is calling my name in a spoiled tone again. "I don't want to get the certificate now. Ethan, who hasn't registered our marriage, is much easier to handle than when we were dating before. I can't guarantee that he will continue to be like this after we get the certificate. Breakup is breakup. Stella, stop making a scene." Just thinking about those words scares me. The shadows from my childhood brought by my parents are already too many. What if one day after we get the certificate, another Lillian number 2 or number 3 appears? Would he also say divorce is divorce? Ethan and I have been in this unclear relationship for a year. For Leo's healthy growth, I would let him go to the kindergarten parent meetings when I was in a good mood. When Leo's teacher referred to him as my husband, I found it hard to refute and just said he was Leo's dad. I will privately tell Leo that his dad and I haven't gotten a marriage certificate yet. Leo doesn't really care about the certificate. He thinks he has a dad and a mom, just like everyone else. Sometimes when I complain about Ethan, Leo will even defend him for me. "Dad, you can't even do this. If I were mom, I wouldn't pay attention to you either." I kept Leo's matter a secret for a year. Ethan's parents found out and made several calls to speak well of Ethan. I took the opportunity to bring Leo back to City A without telling Ethan. I thought Aunt and Uncle would at least inform Ethan, but they didn't. During the day, I stayed with Leo at Ethan's house, and at night, I went back to my own home. Aunt gave me a jade bracelet, but I refused to accept it. Spring goes and autumn comes, and before you know it, another year has passed. Now when I think about being stood up when it was time to get the certificate, I can't help but laugh. Now, the person who feels insecure because there is no certificate has become Ethan. This feeling is so refreshing. Emma often says that the Ethan I trained is like a puppy. When Leo was in 2nd grade, that ring I had left at Ethan's villa was brought back to me again. Of course, it's not because Ethan sweet-talked me into it. Considering the reality, the child needs to have a respectable identity. Plus, Ethan's constant marriage proposals are really annoying.